Hey, good people. Sammy Ashe here, the Executive Director of the Ashe Academy and your host of our Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. Thank you for tuning back in this week. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to remind you that the deadline for our spring collection contest is fast approaching. You have until April 30th to upload your designs to Facebook and or Instagram to compete to win up to $250 and your design added to the Ashe Academy Store. Again, these will be announced on May 10th, aka my birthday. One more thing, April is Financial Literacy Month, so we've been releasing our How to Pay for College series videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays all month. The tips and tricks should help you limit or avoid many expenses related to college, so be sure to check those out. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Ashe Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. I am Sammy Ashe, the Executive Director of the Ashe Academy, and today we are joined by a friend of the foundation. You guys may remember him from our What is a POC episode, but we're back joined with Matthew Cuban Hernandez, who is a rapper, poet, educator, and all-around good guy from Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you for joining us once again.
Yeah, my honor to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to shout out Stephen James. There's a few people that I have met through him or specifically in reference to just being at one of his parties. You are one of those people who was just doing what you do at, I think it was one of his birthday parties. And I was like, oh, that's somebody to follow. That's someone to keep in touch with. So, years later now, especially since we've been through a whole pandemic, I don't even know how many years ago that was back in somebody's November.
Hmm.
But it's glad to have kept in touch with you after all these years. Um, but let's start talking about your background. Like, what is your journey? Could you describe your journey to the arts? I won't just, you're a multi hyphenate, so there are so many different avenues you've taken it, but where did you start?
I'm from Jacksonville, Florida originally, and started in a little hood called Paxson. But ultimately, um, Jacksonville does have a pretty vibrant arts community. And I started going to the little open mics and just venues when I was like 13 years old. I'd go to like music open mics, and everybody there would just be playing guitars, doing covers, and these things would go to like 3 in the morning. So I would be like last on the list, and it'd be like 3 in the morning, be like, here's my little love poem about a girl that broke my heart, and I get booed off stage, but that was kind of where I started, just going to open mics and really being just a kid in the classroom who liked words and would just be writing poems, or writing rhymes and trying to write bars, trying to write actual verses, but not understanding like the 16 bar format at first, and just what came out was poetry.
Awesome. So where does that confidence come from to be a kid and like, okay, like from school to I'm gonna perform this at an open mic? That there's got to be some type of like process to that, or you're like, I'm just gonna do it.
I think it was like I had like a middle school teacher who's gave us an assignment, which was to write a poem.
Hmm.
And then we had to read it in front of the class, and I read it in front of the class and didn't think anything of it. And then over the week, I had all these friends who'd be like, hey man, spit that poem for me again, spit that poem for me again. And I'd be sitting by my locker spitting this poem. And then, I went home, spit it to my big brother, spit it to my sister. And then everybody was just kind of like, whoa, like, wow, you wrote a poem. Nobody was doing that, especially at my age. And it was legitimately the only thing that I was not mediocre at. You know what I'm saying? I was like fantastically mediocre at everything. But this was the one thing I was like, ooh, I think I got the market cornered on this thing. Let me go into this a little bit more. And it just became a journey of me wanting to get better, wanting to learn more, wanting to find out as much as I could about the craft. And then the more I would find out, the more I was like, let me put my other homies on game who like this stuff too. Then I have people to do it with. Because when I first started doing poetry, I was like, 13, 14, 15. I was doing poetry with 25, 30-year-old people, in their 30s, dealing with complicated uh, emotions through their poetry. And so there was never anybody really my age. But yeah, pretty much over that time, um, being in that classroom and having the homies be like, spit it again. It was one of those things I was like, okay, I think I could try this out. I like this. I like the attention I'm getting. Before, it was the attention I was getting was not for positive things. It was for doing crazy stuff, silly things, like, or not silly things, but just crazy stuff.
Redacted, because we're not going to self-incriminate ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, all that stuff's expunged by now anyway, so we're good.
But I hope everyone's hearing the like hyping up your friends. Like that is very impactful. That peer uplift is super important for not only confidence, but like this could be somebody's career path if they are fed positive energy at that age. Like this is exactly what we are here for, to make sure that people know that they can go into these things, so that they can be prosperous. So you did mention your middle school teacher. Did you have any other teachers or professors along the way that were kind of notable for where you've gotten to now?
Yeah, lots. Honestly, it's messed up, but I shout out that teacher, and she was an awesome teacher. She was an English teacher back like sixth or seventh grade, something like that. But the kids were just terrible to her. They were all so mean to her, man. I think back that often now, like as myself as an educator, being like, man, even on my worst days, like I don't think I had a day as bad as like some of those kids gave it to her. So shouts out to her. And the terrible thing is I don't even remember her name right now. And that's what's awful about it. But I knew she was struggling as an educator, even as a kid at the time. I was like, man, she's going through it. But the teachers, I had many educators in my life that really showed a lot of love. The one that I've been kind of building a poem around and really working to tell this story was this teacher named Miss Bryant. And she was a teacher back in Biltmore Elementary when I was in around fifth grade. She to the unassuming person, she was a mean lady. She was a mean old lady, but she was actually, she was like somebody's grandma, man. She was just the sweetest woman, actually, and she didn't put up with anybody's shit. Like, she wasn't gonna sugarcoat nothing for you. I'm sorry, I don't know if I should be cussing or not, but I just said a bad
You
word.
said that the last time. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. That's usually how I test through. And then if nobody goes, oh, it's not a good tactic. I actually got cussed out real bad at a lady one time in DC. I try to be better about that. But anyways, Miss Bryant was just an incredible teacher. I grew up with kind of like a lot of undiagnosed dyslexia. Just really struggling with reading, struggling with writing and spelling and things like that, and just really like just struggling with words. And she took her time with me. I mean, they give you spelling tests as a kid, and you got to spell like aardvark or some stupid stuff like that you're never actually going to write about a damn aardvark, and
Come
the
on,
spell check's
Aardvark.
not.
Come on,
Anyway,
Arthur.
yeah, actually Arthur's pretty dope. But yeah, it was like my whole elementary school time. It was like this was my most shameful time in the week. I'm like, I'm gonna get an F every week. I'm gonna get an F in spelling. End of the week, you're gonna end it with an F. Going home with an F. And that was like first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, all through fifth grade. And then finally, Miss Bryant was like, "Look, Doug, like you're gonna sit with me," and I would fail that test, and she would sit with me afterwards and like make the whole class sit there, and she would go through every single word, and she'd be like, "Nah, spell it." She's like, "Nah, why are you spelling it like that? You can do it like this." And she's like, "Just concentrate, just take your time. Like, if you take your time, you can get it." And I for she worked with me so hard, and she knew I was trying, man. And she ended up giving me an A that year. It was the only year in my entire life through education that I got AB honor roll.
Oh my
So
gosh.
Miss Bryant, shouts out to her.
I mean, but that is so important, like taking the extra time to work with somebody on something that they're struggling with or need just a little bit of help with. And it's kind of funny how like the things that we struggle with as kids may turn into the things that we actually have to do every day of our life. Sort of like reading comprehension for me. Now I have to pay very close attention to everything that's going on. All this marketing stuff requires complete attention to detail. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's just the rest of my life. So
Hmm.
but yeah, you struggling with spelling words and then you're like you're a lyricist. So that just like how does that have you come to terms with like what that really means for like the meaning of your life?
Yeah, now I just think of the English language as another arm of white supremacy, you know. Honestly. I'm like, you gonna judge me because you're bastardizing 12 different languages and making it
Sorry, it
into
was not.
something that doesn't make sense.
I wasn't
And
prepared for that answer.
honestly, that's how I feel. I mean, like, I just feel like anyone judging me on my spelling, like, first, you're ableist. Second of all, it's just you're co-signing white supremacy, which is really what it is. Like, I'm not supposed to be speaking this language, like, but even still, like, English is dope, and it is a beautiful language if you can understand it well. And I'm a very visual learner, and so I love lyrics. I love that repetitive sound. I love the syncopation that comes with putting your lyrics onto a beat. That stuff's dope to me. Dead in the middle of little Italy, little did you know that we riddled the middle, middle didn't do diddly. That sounds awesome. You know what I'm saying? It makes me want to say it. And so I would listen to songs or listen to things that I liked, and I would memorize it and spit it back. And it's beautiful because I've been telling this story a lot actually in the last couple of days with the passing of DMX, Earl Simmons, incredible artist. He was the first rapper that I really listened to as a kid. Like, he was hot right when like my brain worked on like liking things. I was like, ooh, that's dope. And it just set me down a path of like loving hip hop and loving beats and loving the way that sound and way words would sound over it. And I would just memorize whole songs and just spit it the exact same way. Imagine me like 8 years old spitting
I was
like
about to
DMX.
say you
You
sound
know
you
what I'm saying?
sound like you.
Going on, man. I'm telling you, but being like, oh, this isn't something that everybody does. Like, some people get one or two lines, maybe a verse here or there, but like spit it all, the inflections and everything. That wasn't something people were doing. So when it got to that point where I was like, oh, I want to kind of do that with my poems, that it all mixed together. But I always felt like it was dope because I was like, if anybody ever steals my rhyme book, they're not gonna be able to read what the hell I wrote in here. It's like hieroglyphics, like spelled my own way. Um, but it makes Facebook posts and Instagram posts difficult. But other than that, I think it's like whatever.
Hey, you make what you can with your own tool set,
Yeah.
so.
Don't worry about spelling, kids. You can still be a published author and travel the world with your words.
Oh man, there we go. Case in point. So what would you say would be like the most challenging part of your creative process?
Hmm. That's a great question. Um, I think originally, like, when you first start, your challenging part is just being creative, finding the time and space to be creative. Now, my life is so, everything I do is poetry. So like, I
Mhm.
can't really avoid it even if I want to. So it's like I'm teaching poetry, I'm reading poetry, and in the process of it, I write with my students. So I'm always writing poetry. But I think the most difficult thing with my creative process is probably taking the time to focus and edit. Um, and that editing is like not that second edit or that third edit, but like that fifth, fourth, that seventh edit, that manuscript of the entirety
Mhm.
edit, and settling with it, because I'll edit something one way and be like, that's dope, and then I'll come back the next day and be like, I actually want to change this up. And so I think the difficult process is just like consolidating, putting stuff into it, and then doing something with it. Like, the creating of it is cool, like I could do that all day, but then it's where it's giving it legs, it's dressing it, it's sending it out to school, it's raising the piece, the creative process of it, until it's able to go on its own. I don't know why I drug that metaphor out.
You're good, you're good. I feel like sometimes even like us regarding our own art, it could be like a daily thing because I could think something's trash, sleep on it, and then wake up and be like, actually, like that. that was hot. And then sleep on it again and be like, no, it's back to trash. Listen,
Mhm.
you need to rework that. So I totally understand the multiple edits. Do you have to be the one that edits, or do you have like an editor that goes in and okay, final looks, make sure that everything's what is that process? Because I know
Yeah,
people
so
have editors, but
I
it's
think
not
when
usually
it
poetry when I think of someone having an editor for their book.
for sure, and what's crazy is that it's like I was just saying this the other day. I was like, man, a lot of these like really famous writers just have actually just really good editors,
Mhm.
and they just take like 1,000 pages of jargon and like let's narrow that down to like 400 pages of like solid good,
Mhm.
but it's like that with everything. I mean, like
Mhm.
life and in every aspect of it is about editing and the editor, whether it's the clothes you wear, how you might edit your beard, you edit your personality, like it's all about editing. But for me, yeah, I usually go through like as much of it that I can do on my own with editing, until I feel good to present it. But my partner is my number one editor, Alicia Wise. She edited my first manuscript, 3032. She's editing my next manuscript, Good Grief. And, I've worked with many editors, dope poets, and people that do cool things. But I think for me, I love having someone who I can have like a really cohesive and communicative relationship with. Like, I want to be like, hey, let's go through here, and someone who's going to challenge and push me, but also somebody who's going to understand where I'm writing from and why I'm writing, and respect how I might want to present something. And so yeah, Leash Wise, my number one editor.
Awesome, awesome. So on the flip side, what would you say would be the most rewarding part of your artistic process?
Mm, there's lots of rewarding in it, honestly. Like I think like I want to be like everything, but like honestly, like there's there's like so much of it that's editing that's everything. I think about the healing that you get from writing and processing whatever you're writing about. Just in general, being able to process your emotions, being able to process your thoughts. That's super dope. Um, I think a lot about like what it's like to then hear yourself say it out loud to overcome whatever fears might be in like actually saying things out loud, because there's a difference definitely between writing it and then saying it out loud. But giving it away, giving it to the audience. I've been on this real path where I'm just like, I want to just give my art, which I feel like is world class, high quality art, for free as much as I can. I want to do that with the workshops that I do. I want to do that with the shows that I have. I want to do that with the merchandise that I give away. I want to give away my book. This past couple of years, I've given away about 4,000 copies of 3032.
Wow.
We did a Kickstarter to raise money to do it. I'm like, if you want this book, you shouldn't have to pay for it. And like I still have like a couple boxes. So like anybody listening, if you want my work, just ask. I'll give it to you. And I think like, there's knowledge can be a privilege, and it's not just education, but knowledge in itself is a privilege. Knowing knowing gender binary is not fucking rigid is a privilege, and it takes things to understand that information is not completely accessible for anybody and everybody, right? In our community, right? I'm speaking
Absolutely.
specifically about my community,
Hmm.
but you know what I'm saying. So I don't want to hide any tools that I've had to help heal myself behind $15. Like, the fuck is that? Like, kid wants my book, take it. And so I think the biggest thing about it is knowing that your healing and your journey of understanding your own trauma will heal someone else. That's the biggest gift.
I mean, I need my whole team to be listening right now because this is my same sentiment. I'm like, just do everything for free, like everything. Like we don't need anything, everything for free. And I'm so much about access and like reaching and making sure that everybody, the person that needs it the most, will probably not be able to access my marketing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like as much as I push for advertising and all this stuff, like they may never see that thing.
Mm.
So I want to make sure that we're getting to the people, and that's my main objective, as opposed to like, okay, let's charge for every little.
Yeah.
that's not where I'm ever going to be, but I
But
gotta.
there's two sides to that though, man. And
Absolutely.
I had somebody say that to me too. And I'm like, yo, I've been out here being an activist, being a pillar in my community for 15 years, and I'm fucking being evicted from my home because I can't pay
Hmm.
my rent. You know what I'm saying? That's not saying
Yeah.
I do everything for free. No,
Yeah.
I have an
Hmm.
asking price, and if you can
Yeah.
pay it, you will be paying it, right? But I'm not going to charge a school in some hood USA the same thing that I would charge Rutgers University.
Hmm.
The same thing that I would charge, UC Hastings, right? You're going to get that full price, because if I don't show up, those students who are enrolled in any college USA, they're going to be all right. They'll still be cool. And that's
Hmm.
not to say college students don't struggle, but that's to say there will be other opportunities for you to find that healing if that's what you're searching for, as to where this young person who's straddling the gang life, straddling whether or not they're going to kill somebody tomorrow or kill themselves. They might need this right now today, and they don't have $2,000 to pay me to come through. And so I try to balance it out. Like, if you can pay it, then they'll get it for free. But yeah,
And we touch
pay
agree on that
poets
too.
is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
there
Pay
we go.
poets, God damn it! Don't be
There we
trying to
have it.
slide us and don't be, oh, but you guys do. No, no. Every time you pay us, it means somebody else who can't will get some healing.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Anyways, I had to make sure that was.
We both did because my team's gonna be like, stop trying to do that. Don't stand on that soapbox and say we got these scholarships to pay for, people. Please donate and please pay
You
for
know what
those
I'm saying?
poets.
You know what I'm saying? Donate, donate, donate.
So, talking about your work, how did your first manuscript come to be? Like, what
Mm,
was what was that process?
it was an interesting process. I was. Let's see. I was already a full time. I was living off my art for almost 10 years before I published my first book. I had quit my job at the post office in 2009. I was like, I'm gonna be a poet. Barack Obama's president, anything's possible. So I was like, I will be poet. And I for that year, I toured for 9 months out of that year. I hit everywhere in the city. I've produced and released like 6 different poetry albums at that point. But there was still that mindset in my head of like, you can't spell.
Oh wow.
You're dyslexic. Like, nobody's gonna want to read your work. They might want to listen to your work. They might want to see your work uh, performed, but nobody's gonna want to read it. And so there was so much of that imposter syndrome that took years to break through. I was a national, international touring artist, getting you know paid well enough
Hmm.
for about 10 years, and I was before I got the nerve to publish the book. And really, the thing that pushed it over that hill was my mom passing. My mom passed in 2017, and she never got to hold a book of my poems. She never got to read my name on the side of a book. And I was super just disappointed with that. I'm like, that was a huge failure in my eyes at that moment. And you know it drove me to be like, yeah, we're putting this book out, and we're putting this book out for my mother, we're putting it out for my students, we're putting it out for the hood I grew up in, putting it out for being a brown boy in the hood. And those were all the things that I wanted to dedicate it to. And when my why became that powerful, I was like, I really don't care what's in this book now. If I love it, if it has my heart and it attaches to that why, it's going in, and I'll be proud of it. And then the book became something else. It became something that it was like, I wanted to give it to young people and say, look, you now know a published poet, and I'm no different than you, and you can write your own. And this book is free, but you have to write your own book now. You have to tell your own story. And yeah, it's just been a crazy journey. Like, once that why got really attached to that work, it just kind of became its own thing, became its own life. But yeah, that biggest thing was, man, like I was like, I have to do it now. There were so many things that died when my mom died, and like a lot of it was my excuses. you know So it's kind of a dark answer.
That's beautiful though. No, because that's you were doing some poetry on your mom at that party that I met you at.
Mm,
So that was actually the reason why I even said hello because
mm,
it touched me because we were there for hours. I want y'all to know like this was not a short party. Someone took the rest of my bottle of Pinot Noir. I have never forgotten. It was the best Pinot Noir I probably had in my life too. And I was like, oh, let me get another taste. But no, that was a great night. So I can only imagine like the full breadth of that. Um, but yeah, absolutely. How does it feel knowing that you may be the catalyst for a new artist discovering their own talent? Since you've given your art to them and
Feels
and
crazy.
you have to write your own.
Feels crazy. Yeah, it feels really crazy. I think my physical language probably just spoke a lot more than I did. Like I'm like, I don't even want to look at the camera. I'm just gonna look down. I'm just pretend like that question wasn't asked. And I don't know why. Like it's what I want. Like I really want to inspire people. I really want someone to say like, "Yo, I do this because of X, Y, Z." But it's also like, I don't know if I own it. Then I have to fucking, and I have to be there and stuff. I don't know. It feels like a lot to live up to,
Mm,
and I'm just a dude. I'm just trying to figure out my own stuff. Um, it honestly brings me to a really emotional state. It makes me feel closer to my mother. It makes me feel like I'm doing something that I'm supposed to be doing. Um, and and honestly, it's like the crux of like why I like do anything. It's like if that one person can then have that ripple effect to another person, it's like this world is so crazy. Everything around us is so wild. And I'm just trying to like, I feel like I'm like dropping raindrops in the ocean. Like it's like, is it doing anything? But when it comes back like that, you know that yeah, it's doing something in some places, and it's honestly amazing. I said I would give my book to these students and say, okay, this book's free, but you got to write your own book. And I had a young lady come to one of my shows, and she was a student at one of the schools that I had taught at, and she was like, yeah, I wrote my book. She's like, I didn't have a notebook, so I wrote it in all of the margins of your book. And so everywhere in my book that didn't have any words typed, she wrote her poems. And it was like the whole book was full from like end to end. It's insane. I mean, even like I've told that story a couple times now, and it's just like it's wild. It's weird to even say it. It's wild to think of. Because I remember being a kid and being like, man, I wish someone would write a poem about me. And to know people are writing poems because of me is just, yeah, it's wild. I try to just let it roll off my back. I'm like, I'll acknowledge that on my deathbed or something. But right now I got more work to do.
have a little rosebud moment. Drop that little
Yeah, it's cool. It's like whatever, man. I gotta
the snow
thank you.
globe.
That's awesome. I got more stuff. I gotta keep going. If I think about it now, I'm gonna cry.
Oh gosh. Yeah, we are not gonna be baby. We call it baby cry face. Crying on here. It's that ugly cry when nobody can hear anything or understand what we say. But I will move on for the sake of that. But because you already got me going.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
so where between the place you were in for your first manuscript to now for your anticipated work, is it Good Grief? Is that the
Hmm.
title of it? Um, where are you now in writing that or completing that work compared to getting to
Yeah.
book two?
So that book is written. Um, Good Grief is pretty much written. We're in a drafting stage, an editing stage, somewhere around like the sixth or seventh. But uh, as far as like the mental capacity, I think 3032 was just like I needed to just get that book out. And there's things in there that I look back and I'm like, meh, I don't really like that. I wish that wasn't in there. And there's other things I'm like, oh, that's really good. I like that. I'm glad that's in there. But ultimately, I didn't care. I actively tried to not care about the quality
Mm.
quality of the poems I was putting in. Like, I wasn't trying to flex on anybody with my pen game in this book. I was just trying to fucking let out my emotions. I
Mhm.
wasn't trying to like show you that I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just literally trying to get through that. And I think in all my work, I'm not trying to prove anything. But in this next manuscript, I feel just really good about the creative choices I made with some of the poems. I feel really good about the way I approached it. And it's a lot different. One is currently, what 3032 was the current grieving. This one is analyzing and going through and out of the grieving process, which is, it's the good grief. It's overcoming it. It's the healing. This one was like, here's the knife. I'm currently got a knife in my chest, and here it is. This one is like, let me show you how to get that knife out of your chest. This is the process I went through.
Well, that's just a beautiful way to sum it up. We are so excited for that. Let us know when that comes out so we can blast that out to make sure everybody goes out and gets that. Um, I do want to switch reels a little bit just for, I feel like in your illustrious career, you've received some advice. Let's talk about the worst bit of it. So, what's some bad advice you received along the way?
So much. God, I could list off bad advice. I feel like
It's
a
like
lot
on
of
the
it
greatest hits. Like,
I mean, a lot of it I don't remember because I'm like, that's just bad advice. I'm not doing that. Like, one of it is like, the only thing that matters is the points in these slams. Like, nothing else matters but the points. I'm like, that's bad advice. Or like, I had a poet tell me like, why would I write more poems? Like, I wrote 5 really good poems, and those are all the poems I need. I was like, okay, that seems a little stagnant. Also cool, I guess. I don't know. Bad advice though. I mean, honestly, I don't remember a lot of it. Like, it when you're hearing it, and you're like, that doesn't sound right, and or you troubleshoot your way through it, and you realize, no, that's actually really bad advice. I think, sometimes we say, put yourself in the same place you were when you wrote it, when you perform it. And I think that's bad advice. I think
Mhm.
that when you're constantly go back to that same exact place that you felt when you wrote it, well, what healing can come from it? I think the poem doesn't get a chance to evolve either. The poem doesn't get a chance to live either. I think you perform it in the place that you're in. If the place that you're in brings you back to where you wrote it, okay, but if you're in a place where you're like, I had a poem about, suicidal ideation, and I've tried to perform it maybe like a year ago, and I couldn't get past the first lines. I just couldn't remember it. And I was like, dang, I was a little embarrassed that I couldn't remember the poem, but then I was also like, I'm really glad I can't remember that poem right now. That poem is not in me right now.
Mhm.
I don't feel that right now, you know? And I think sometimes that we put ourselves back, we re-traumatize ourselves to then give an authentic performance when, you know, there is performance in our art, but it's not a performance art. You're really telling your story. You're trying to be as honest and as open as you can. And so, yeah, um, people that write for the audience, people that are writing for other people other than themselves. There's lots of bad advice, poetry, that there's a time limit on success. That's bad advice.
Mm.
That you have to look a certain way in order to achieve certain things, that you have to have some level of education in order to be successful in things. I think those were always gatekeeping things. I mean, I could go for days, you know. You look better without a beard. I don't know. I mean, that was me personally, but just bad advice. I look better with a beard.
So, those are great things to, send away. Or I think it's super important for us to know, like listening to your own intuition. If you know something doesn't feel right, don't act on it. Like the good advice will most likely feel right, or it might just be challenging to do it, but you'll know when something's like, don't, that's not for me. So what's some good advice that like felt right, that, or maybe some good advice that was challenging to you, but in turn worked out to be like the best thing for you?
Hmm. Stay honest. Stay honest. And just in everything that you do, that was, stay yourself, don't change, keep that childlike nature, keep joy. It's good advice, good things. I think that understanding that if you have a strong why, then everything else follows. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? Why do you need that? Right? Why do you need to win that? Why do you need this level of approval? Why do you want to write this poem? Why does this need to be heard right now? Right? If you could answer all those whys, then like you can do whatever you want. Anything is possible. Like you could do anything. If your why is strong, I'm doing this because of this. Oh, okay, cool. I got into Naked and Afraid recently, and I was like, what are these people doing? Like, I don't know, why are you doing this? Some people are like, I just want to conquer the jungle. And I'm like, you're a dummy. Like, this one woman was on there and she was like, my friend before she passed said that she thought I could do this and I want to prove her right. And she's no longer here and I'm doing it for her because she thought I could do it. That is a great why. It doesn't even have to be monumental. It's like someone thought I could do it. They're no longer here, so I have to do it. That's like pretty much everything in myself, right? Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be perfect. Like time is whatever. Time doesn't exist. We're all living things. I don't know. I'm going into just like super cosmic and universal stuff, but
We appreciate it.
good advice. It doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like an attack, right? But I think the biggest thing to know is that you can feel okay, great advice, right? You won't know when you're wrong, right? Ever. Maybe you'll find out that you're wrong, but when you're wrong, you won't think you're wrong. You'll think you're right. And so even when you feel like you're absolutely right about any situation, you have to hold like a 10% variable that maybe you could be wrong. And I think approaching everything like that like maybe even though I know my name is Matthew Cuban Hernandez, maybe it is Mark Cuban. Maybe I am a Dallas, basketball club owner, billionaire. Maybe. It's unlikely, but I don't know. That's something that's worked out really well for me.
Awesome. So aside from all of the arts and everything that you have created, what brings you joy?
Watching someone conquer their fears. Yeah, it brings me a lot of joy. It could be anything, like I watched this whole video of like people just jumping off a diving board that were like terrified of heights. And it was so great. Like they were like, oh, like freaking out. They jump. I was like, this is awesome. I think the thing that where I see that happen the most is just in my students. When we have a great class, when someone writes and expresses themselves in a way that they didn't think they were capable of doing. That's why I always say my favorite form of poetry is honesty. You get that from people that are experiencing poetry for the first time in their own writing, because they're not trying to write a better poem than their last poem because they didn't write a poem. They're not trying to impress any poets because they don't think they are a poet. They're just writing whatever they're feeling at that moment. And that is usually some of the most beautiful stuff. Like I've seen some of my favorite things, and those bring me the most joy. I mean, also getting a dub in Call of Duty, like flan, chocolate cake, things like that are just delicious. Those are things that bring me joy, sure.
For our resident foodies, we appreciate that. Flan is delicious. If only I could find a vegan version of it, though. That's the issue. I have not.
Some
A
things
vegan
are worth
custard.
whatever karma comes your way,
on that note, let's segue into our final line of questionings. Not because he said whatever line of karma, but it's time. We could talk for hours, but let's. So, who is your biggest inspiration?
My mother, Ivana Hernandez. She's like probably like my grandmother too, but like that's just probably like trickle down effect to my mom. Right. But yeah, she was my biggest inspiration just as a human. Um, you know, just the way she approached every aspect of life, even like the real, like especially how she approached like the really shitty aspects of life.
Mm,
And you would never know that like she's going through what she's going through or that stuff's happening because she's just like, we'll get through it. It'll be cool. And we always did, even in her passing, we're getting through it. But so for sure my mom, but outside of like the direct, influences that like most people who have a good relationship with their parents would say, I love Pac. Tupac was a huge inspiration to me. Music has always been a giant inspiration to me. I love Maya Angelou, the story of Maya Angelou and who she was as an individual, super inspiration to me. My wife, who's just an incredibly prolific writer and performer, Alicia Wise, she's just an ungodly inspiration to me constantly. My students, huge inspiration, honestly. Yeah, there's lots of really things that inspire me. And then if we're just talking like technically, like on like a technical scale of like how they inspire me, I love like Patricia Smith. I love Jeffrey McDaniel. I love the way they write and approach things. I love Hugh Man Wynn. I love the way like all of these poets approach their writing. Super, super dope. Yeah, I mean, I'm inspired all the time by all kinds of shit. I like Daily Dose of Internet. If you ever watch that on YouTube, it's really cool. Uh, it's kind of inspiring. I don't
I
know.
will look it up. I'll look it up.
It's interesting stuff. It's like 2-minute videos of like cats. It's great.
Perfect. Who do you hope to uplift with your work? We have touched on
Mm,
this, but we got to ask it. It's a it's a necessary
yeah.
question to re-ask.
Um, Kids in the hood, brown boys in the hood. Um, people who feel like they're a little different. People who are trying to do something different with their lives. People who are trying to find their own personal joy. I'm really hoping that finds them. Um, these are all great questions too, because I should be asking myself these questions more. You know, like these are good questions. I mean, I definitely like I act in and I feel this way, but it's good. It's good to like say
Reflect
this
on it.
stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, but like, yeah, for sure. People that look like me that come from where I come from. Yeah. And not
Perfect.
necessarily look like me because I look like a lot of shit, but like
So I'm only laughing because I mean we discussed it on what is a person of color. So you're like, hey, I'm not just one thing. Let's put that out there.
yeah.
So the final question is, or final question for the Q&A section. How do you stay engaged with your motivation? So what keeps you going?
What keeps me going? I'm like the expectation of taking a nap afterwards. No. uh, Honestly, probably like all the things I've spoke about above. My mother's legacy, my students, people who look like me where I come from. Knowing the bullshit that I went through. I think like I said some shit like last week that I've been thinking about for like a week now. It's like I don't agree with that. And like somebody was saying something about like they're like you're a people pleaser. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a people pleaser. But I was like, I'm not a people pleaser at all. I don't care to please anybody, really. Honestly, like I could give a fuck. But I think what I really am, and I dig into this it's a quote that Robin Williams said, which is like, I think that um some of the people that try to offer happiness to everybody are often the most saddest people because they know what it likes to feel completely worthless and they don't want anyone else to feel that way. And I think that's really what it is. I think that so much of the life I've had, whether it's like the depression, trauma, or whatever, that I've been through, overcome, or tried to, or in the process of overcoming. Like, I don't want anybody to have to go through that and not have the tools that I've had. Like, I can't imagine fighting the battle of depression that I fought without having poetry. Like, I honestly don't think I'd be alive. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through that without at least knowing that they have this tool. So I think that answers that question.
I appreciate that. So I have to ask, just because I'm curious, what is your sign? Because you mentioned that feeling very Taurus energy in there. I don't know if that is your sign, but
if I tell you my sign, your whole opinion of me is going to change. So I'm a Gemini. Now everybody's like, no, everything he said is a lie. There's a whole other side of him. He's not cool at all.
No, I get along with Geminis so well. Like, some of my best friends are Geminis because I don't deal with their bad twin. It's like, your only choice is the good twin with me. So that didn't change anything. We're gonna get along. That's it.
I always say that, people are like, oh, well, you must have a whole nother personality. And it's like, actually, no. Like, what I have is I have like a really extroverted side and I have a really introverted side. Like, I'm totally fine like hosting a show and being the life of the party if that's what someone needs me to be. But I'm also super cool with like sitting in the back and doing nothing at all. Like, both of those things seem like, okay, I'm not excited to do either, to be honest, but I'll do both, Like, I think that's the biggest Gemini of me. It's like, I'm really joyful. I also deal with some depression, but fuck that depression, I'm good. But also it's still there, like, that's the Gemini.
Perfect. I appreciate that too. So what is next for you? I know we got the Good Grief coming up, but anything else you want to tell people about that we can get them ready for?
Honestly, there's like a lot of really cool things that I would love to tell people about. I work with an awesome organization called Street Poets Inc. We've been doing really, really cool things throughout this quarantine, which I guess it's not a quarantine anymore. I don't know what the hell's happening in the world. I try not to go outside, but every Tuesday we have a writing and meditation circle, which is on Zoom, and really, really awesome. Been a place where I've actually written this entire manuscript that'll be coming out in the next year. Wow. Great place to do some writing. Awesome. Great place to do some thinking. It's free, 4 to 6 Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. And we also do like open mics every other Friday on our Street Poets Inc. channel. I'm also hosting stuff with the Poetry Lounge every Tuesday night. We do stuff there. It's a great organization if you're looking for poetry here in Los Angeles. And if you're looking for poetry national, I recently became the vice president of Southern Fried Poetry Incorporated, which is a big poetry slam, the largest poetry slam in the world right now. And we're going to be having a digital poetry slam this summer. We'll be giving away $6,000 to teams and individuals who are going to be competing virtually on Zoom, because we're responsible. And that'll be happening. We're going to be doing, they kind of have like a digital world where you'll create an avatar. It's like super dope. Check out Southern Fried Poetry. Check out Southern Fried Poetry Virtual Festival. Anything you type in Southern Fried should pop up. See what we got going on. That'll be in June. There's also all kinds of crazy stuff that'll be popping out frequently, various shows, things. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Cubes Reviews, where you can watch me get dubs and also suck at Call of Duty. Man, there's probably like a few other things, but just follow me at Matthew Cuban. We'll be friends. I'll tell you what's going on.
I am so glad that I asked or added this question to the line of questioning, because I couldn't have captured all that in your intro. Just to be like, yeah, he does this, this, and this, and we would have just kept it pushing. So we will give you a few follows. We appreciate a good elevator pitch and a few like, okay, we're gonna link them to everything on that. Please look for all of those links in the description box. You're going to get a few follows, some extra follows, and some more promotion out of us, of course, because we appreciate our friends of the foundation. So once again, this was Matthew Cuban Hernandez. Thank you for coming back, because this was an excellent interview. I appreciate it so much. Great conversation. All right, everybody, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, y'all.